It's Owen, and he's got his hat-trick.
Throughout my career, I've had people encouraging me along the way, helping me to get things done.
And Owen shoots.
Whether it's from my parents, whether it's from different coaches, teachers at school. I think it was very beneficial that I had two older brothers. I always wanted to be as good as they were.
Oh, what a finish!
My father always treated me like a professional footballer. Even when he would talk to me, he said, I'm going to cut your steak tonight because you need to be strong for when you're a professional footballer. Those little subliminal messages, hence I thought I was a footballer probably before my time. My dad said right from the start that I was always going to be a centre forward. He said I just basically loitered around the goal.
What a pass! Michael Owen wins it!
I think if I had to name one player that's assisted me throughout my career, most of all, it would have to be Steven Gerrard.
Gerrard, here's Michael Owen.
From the age of 11, we were in the same Liverpool team together. Invariably, he would be the one doing the assists and I'd be the one finishing it off.
Gerrard, that's a brilliant ball! That's dazzling!
ABSA, the official African banking partner of the Premier League, is giving you the assist so you can get things done.
Hi everyone, this is Radull Live. Thanks for joining us. Every Saturday 1 to 2 p.m. we talk sport and we talk Kenyan sport, because if we are not going to make the difference, nobody's going to. Now, I do need to remind you guys that there's lots of football happening all over the world this weekend, and as you know, without a great assist, it is almost impossible to score goals. And in the same breath, ABSA knows that you have goals you want to score in 2021, and ABSA is saying we can assist you to score those goals. Simply open an ABSA One account, and guys, you get the best, most flexible loan repayment plan. You can have up to 7 years to repay your loans, and it's unsecured loans. Guys, you need to talk to ABSA to get a loan, but you need to open an ABSA One account. Just text the word one, O-N-E, one, to 22268, and you'll get all the information you need. Now, I can see you guys are just waiting to win kit. Hey, Kenyans. Huh? The quiz will come in a while from Betika. Yes, I'm going to ask you a question, and when I do, guys, you can respond to the question, nominate a Mashinani team, and they will win Betika kit. As you can see, today I'm wearing Soccer Sisters. I was there last Sunday. They won 2 weeks ago. And yeah, somebody else can win today. But wait for that question. It's coming a bit later in the show. Let me introduce my guests. I talk too much. By the way, I talk too much. Let me introduce my guests. The CEO of Enda Sportswear.
Yes.
Navayola Osembo.
Yes.
And Ngarua.
There you go.
Got it.
Ngarua Kamuya. I've been practicing.
There you
It's
go.
taken me 10 days. Sports lawyer Ngarua Kamuya.
Yes.
And guys, today we're going to talk about the business of sport, because every week we're here whining about there's no money, there's no money, there's no money. But why, when this sport is a billion-dollar industry all over the world?
Multi-billion.
Multi-billion-dollar industry
Yes.
all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
Navalaya, I want to start with you, because I met you about 2 years ago. I think your first article was done by CNN, was it?
Yes.
And shame on Kenya, we had to take our cue from CNN, that a young lady on our doorstep, a Kenyan, is making sportswear that can rival any sportswear anywhere in the world. How did you get into that?
Getting into sport, I think, was just interest. It wasn't a plan. It was just always been interested in sports, always watching sports, supporting sports, watching basketball, you know. And so the key thing came when I realized there were no Africans in tennis in the top 100 ATP list. And so, yeah, I know the last one I think was Noah, not Noah. Okay, anyway, he's a son of a politician, but it was like way back in the 80s. And after that, there was like a blackout of Africans. And so my journey started by asking, why are there not African in sports? And then I tried to start a tennis academy that didn't work. That's a long story for another day. But after that, I realized that there was a lot of opportunity in athletics, especially everybody kind of like supporting Kenyan athletics, but we were consumers, not creators. And so then the question, once you start looking at the numbers, you're like, wait a minute, like this is a multi-billion-dollar industry. We are basically having just a few athletes benefit just a little money. And so, but everybody's using us, you know? And so why not get into that space and create so that we could also make shoes for the world and involve more people than just the athletes, like have people with jobs and community development and stuff like that. So it was more of an opportunity, but it wasn't, it was just an accumulation of many things that led me to that journey.
To decide to make shoes. By the way,
Yes.
I'm wearing, I don't know if you can see my shoes.
Yes.
Can you guys see my shoes? I need to go up like this. I'm wearing Ender Sportswear shoes. She's
Thank
also
you.
wearing her Ender Sportswear shoes. And
Yeah.
I hope before the show ends, we'll tell you where you can get a pair of Ender Sportswear shoes. Because
Awesome.
you're so right. Ngarua, I want to bring you into this conversation. Here we are producing the best athletes in the world, but as Navayola says, we're going for those big brands in other countries and then complaining how sport doesn't have money. Surely.
In my opinion, I've always said that second to the Polynesians, Kenya has, in terms of raw athleticism, the Kenyan athletes are right there at the top, second to the Polynesians. Those are the Fijians and the Tongans. Those guys are on our level. But I believe that our athletes are second to that. So in comes the issue of business. And you see the focus in Kenya, the problem is that Serikali's idea mentality. And you'll allow me to quote like the bigger brands. For Nike, for Adidas, for Puma, to be a big sporting brand, everything goes back to the business of sports in itself. Everything is pegged on the athlete, but the athlete has to have a way of surviving in that ecosystem. And how is the athlete surviving? It has to be their job. It cannot be their side thing. They have to be paid a salary, you know, to
It's people's jobs all over the world. Why isn't it?
Exactly. Michael Jordan has a famous quote where he says, there's no difference between a professional athlete and a lawyer or a doctor. You are both earning your salary doing what you're supposed to do. So at the end of the day, the reason why those big brands are big brands is because, of course, they're attached to big-time athletes. And the reason why those athletes are big is because a businessman sat down and was able to understand the whole value chain in terms of the business of sport and was able to invest in that particular athlete. And therefore, they're able to, you know, because of their talents. There are two things that move the emotion over people, say for politics. It's music/film and sports. And I think sports is number one. So you're able to capture the imagination and the feelings of a person. And that's how sporting brands have been able to attach themselves to athletes and therefore blow big. So the issue in Kenya is, number one, the Serikali's idea mentality. Number two, we don't look at it from a business perspective. Number three, and unfortunately, now it's changing, but for us, our folks looked at sports as a pastime. They never looked at it as this can be an employer, this can be a business. Think about the ecosystem that's. Let's use hypothetically. Let's use Manchester United. Think about the ecosystem around Manchester United. Say for the players, the coaches, the tech bench. Think about the restaurants that are surviving around there. Think about, to her point, the sporting apparel brands that are attached to Manchester United. Think about the jobs that are created in that ecosystem.
From security to groundsmen to
Exactly.
drivers to
Yeah.
lawyers and doctors and masseuses. And
Yeah, it's a whole. You know, when Tottenham were moving from White Hart Lane to the Tottenham Stadium, one of the delays was from the County Council of London, and the reason they delayed is because Tottenham had to prove how they were going to substitute the businesses and the jobs that were going to be lost once White Hart Lane left. Once Tottenham left White Hart Lane and went to Tottenham. That's where government comes into play. Government comes in from a policy perspective. And I think that's where we have it wrong in Kenya. I keep on asking guys, when England qualifies to go for the World Cup, the government of England has nothing to do with the tickets. It's the English FA that goes ahead and does it.
Yeah.
Carol, if I ask you, how many stadiums does the government of England own in England? None.
Actually, not even Wembley.
Not even Wembley. Wembley is owned by the FA. So that's where we get it wrong in Kenya. We are trying to think that government must be doing everything. While government's work is to make it easy for the private sector to thrive. But for the private sector to thrive, you need private investment. You need people to look at it from a business perspective.
Which is yes and no. Let me come to that as I just say a few shout outs.
Yeah.
If I don't say shout outs, guys, these lawyers, they want to hear their name. Okay, this is not. World Senior, I nominate Wazito United as I wait for the answer. You can't nominate a team till you get the question, guys. Ochi Weda just wants a shout out, landed from Gethsemane. Usually he says Mesopotamia. Hey, where's my tongue today? Joanne Mien says to Kondani, Ochi Weda strong as usual. Eddie, okay, he's waiting for the quiz. Boni Waema is present. Edgar Majale waiting for this conversation. By the way, Princess Nelly just wants to hear you talk. She said that voice, your voice is heavier than her weight. Seriously?
Oh my God.
Isaac Bagaka, Man United fan #1, tuning in live from Kisii. Ngesti Dunga asked Navayola, how did Enda come about? What led her on this path? She has answered quite a bit of it. But I was going to say the yes and the no about the infrastructure.
Yeah.
You're so right that in England, stadia are literally owned by clubs, colleges, schools, things like that.
Yeah.
But as you also mentioned, our government has not created a conducive environment for clubs to thrive. And I think as a third world country, even when it comes to sport, the government are the only people with the muscle right now.
Exactly.
To do things like build stadia. Because you've not created an environment where, and by the way, we'll go into what the clubs are doing wrong, because there's so much the clubs are doing wrong.
Yeah.
But you can't expect a Western Steamer to build a stadium or a Kisumu All Stars to be able to afford to build a stadium when they can't even pay salaries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. It's a yes and no, because kind of operating from the business perspective, like in my case, I'm literally that case where it's a private investment putting in into sports. But then you also, as a business, there are also many challenges you go through. Like some of the challenges that I would say are a threat to the business are policy things. There are things that have to do with some sort of compliance, or some things have to do with some chasing of some things. And so if the environment is not conducive, then even as a business person, I have to look at the risk and say, is it worth investing in that space? And right now, the overall view of the Kenyan sports scene is that it's messed up, there's corruption. Like, it doesn't have a lot of positivity. And so even private investors would shy away from putting that money.
And then a few people who are putting money, like the betting companies, are being trampled on.
Yeah.
Yes. And so it's more of it has to be like a delicate balance where, yes, we understand that we are not in asking the government to do something, but there has to be an environment that, you know, like actively identify sports as a place where we want to grow, but actively invests in making those things happen. You know, what does it mean to run a sports business? What exactly do you need? What are your problems? How can we make that easier? And then it makes it easier for not just Enda to be, but there'll be another company and another company, and then we're the ones who say, let's build a stadium for our athletes. You know, like let's do this, right? But before we get there, there are certain challenges which I think. I'm always aware that the fact that we are in different markets is what helps us survive, right? It's not really the Kenyan market. But then how many brands can be able to do that? And it's not an easy process. I'm not saying it's impossible, but so until we get to that point where it's easy for not just Enda, but another brand, then it becomes, you know, one
infrastructure.
Exactly.
Because here, okay, in England, most of the stadiums are owned by clubs. But if you go to the States, it's corporates.
Exactly.
It's the Toyota Stadium.
It's actually... It's two pronged in the States. It's the corporates, basically it's a naming rights deal. So what normally happens, it's actually the club that comes out. For example, I think about the Boston Garden for the Boston Celtics. It's actually Boston Celtics who constructed it, but they sold the naming rights to TD. That's why it's called TD Gardens. Same thing with Houston with the Toyota Center. Same thing with the Oracle Arena for the Golden State Warriors. United Center for the Chicago Bulls. So it's the same. I mean, Carol Radull, your club, Arsenal, sold naming rights to Emirates.
Yes.
You know, Emirates are the ones who funded the construction, yes, but part of the deal was a naming rights deal. But just back to your point, and okay, I'm afraid I'll have to say this, and you're right.
Don't be afraid.
You're very right. It's a policy issue. Beginning of last year, I had a meeting with people in the Ministry of Sports, and basically these conversations we're having. And I said, look, you guys, you have to make it attractive for the private investor to get in, because what I'm looking at you is the revenue stream you create. You're creating a new tax base that's not existing. For the sporting organization in itself, you have taxes in terms of corporate tax, pay, VAT, and pay or the employees and the players themselves. VAT for the service providers, and withholding tax on dividend income for the shareholders. For the businesses that plug in to the sporting organization, for example, ENDA, you'll have to employ your own people.
Yeah.
So that's another revenue stream that the government didn't have. But you have to make the policies attractive for the first investment, which is the billion-shilling owners to come in and pump in their money for the sporting scene. So
I
we
think
sat down.
sorry,
I beg your pardon. We sat down and they came up and they told me, fantastic news, Ngarua, come up with a concept note. I think something can happen. And I sat down and just made it easy for them. I just told them this is what's happening in the West. I gave them all the owners. I told them this is what's happening in Africa. Billionaires are getting into sports. It's time us guys do it. Let's make it attractive. 1 year later, I've never heard anything back from them. So that also shows you how serious.
You sent that to the government. You made a proposal
to the CS of sports, actually. So 1 year later, there's nothing I've heard about it. So it also shows you the kind of thought process that is in government with regard to sport. And I think that's where now the change comes. It'll have to be dog's law for me. It'll have to be the dog's law effect. For there to be betting legislation to come into place, Sport Pesa had to blow up. For this, and let me tell you the most unfortunate thing, this is the same way you first interview a CNN, this thing is going to blow up when some foreigners are going to come and invest in sporting organizations, and then it will blow up. Then government will sit down and say, okay, now let's create legislation, because now they want to get into it.
But then our government are our own worst enemies.
Yes, they are.
If they're not facilitating us to make our own investment in sports, they better do it.
Yes.
And they're not doing it.
Yes.
And
I think, sorry, I mean, it's just like, I'm thinking of different things, because I feel like when we say the government, it's like, what is the government? Who's the government, And I think it begs to step back and say, who is occupying these positions, and do they understand the impact of what they have? Because I feel like if we generalize like that, then people are able to hide, and say, yeah, the government. But then I'm like, the
reason I use a term like the government, and I keep saying this, I think people are a little harsh on Amina as a CS for sport, because she's already working with in an industry that, from the budgetary process, you're already being cut at your feet.
Exactly.
So if the government, this time and you can't really blame the Ministry of Finance, because they're also answerable to Parliament and answerable to the top seat, So it's a whole chain of people who probably, as you say, don't understand the business of sport.
Yeah.
They don't understand that sport needs an investment, just like mining, just like
exactly.
Agriculture and education. Put proper money in sport.
Yeah.
I think last year was it 14 billion?
It was 14 billion.
14 billion, of which I think 3 or 4 is for the stadiums we've been promised for the last 10 years. Yeah. And then we have almost 100 federations in this country. Everybody's saying, Nisa idea, as you put it.
And that's the biggest, let me tell you, fine, there's a government's part, and my firm belief is that, like I said, government's work is policy. Make it conducive for the private person to invest. But the truth and the fact of the matter, Carol, is the federations and the people who are leading these federations are also very lazy guys.
I think that's, I agree with that, but it also goes back to the point, I think she emphasized it, where I was like saying, who are the people and what is their motivation? I don't think a lot of the people in sports are in sports to advance it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are getting in to figure out what can I get and how can I benefit myself from this position. Exactly. And as a result, then, you have people in the right places but with the wrong incentives. And so I'm there to figure out what can I get, instead of looking at the opportunity of, if I create a place where this organization or this sport excels to a certain point, then it gets to, like, everybody benefits. But it's a bit hard for us to get there.
You guys are being diplomatic.
Yeah.
we need, first of all, we need a president who loves sport.
No.
Or we need a president who recognizes the value of sport. Because when it comes to the ministry, now not the federations, the government chain,
Yes.
they've been put in those positions. So you cannot even go after someone and say, hey, why are you CS for sport? You were appointed, you took the job.
True.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So from how they are appointed, we need to get it right. And ultimately, the power is in our vote. And I keep telling people, I'm not going to tell you how to vote, but vote selfishly
Exactly.
when the vote comes around. I was inboxed once by a footballer who was telling me, he was whining and whining. He wanted handouts from me and all that stuff, whatever. So I said, then we started talking a bit. Then you're saying how the industry is messed up, the sport industry is messed up and all that stuff. And then I asked him, incidentally, how did you vote? And he said, I voted for this government. First he said, what does my vote have to do with anything? He said, I voted for this government. I said, why? Because you share a last name. I said, vote for somebody who's going to do something for your industry.
Yeah.
Especially the second time around. Maybe you had hopes the first time around. You were made promises. The minute the promises didn't come, then he said, oh, but they were also going to do schools and what. I said, every government, every manifesto will promise schools, infrastructure,
Healthcare.
agriculture. Be selfish. Vote like Americans. Americans, I am a farmer. I will wait for who's going to reduce the price of fertilizer.
Yeah.
You know, vote selfishly when the time comes around. And by now we know who cares about sport or not.
But you see,
That's
also,
true.
and I put a start to that. And if you go back to the States, the reason I piggyback off America a lot is because in terms of the business
They've
of
got their
sport,
sport rights.
no one can match up to them in this world. And you see, what happened initially was that the guys who were running the federations made it necessary for the politician to recognize the sporting organization. And that is a private investment thing I keep on talking about. There's a guy, the NBA trophy is called the Larry O'Brien Trophy. Everyone thinks of Larry O'Brien as a former commissioner of the NBA, but he actually was a cabinet member of JFK. And guys don't know that part. So he used his influence as a politician to push the agenda of sport, to the point now that every team that wins the NBA championship goes to the White House. Every team that wins the NFL, the Super Bowl, goes to the White House to visit the president. So they have made it, the private person, the businessman, the big businessmen came in. And remember, the big businessmen are the ones who fund these elections.
That's true.
So when they get into sports, like I'm saying, in the top 100 list of the most richest guys in the world, about 20 are sports team owners. The Sheikh Al Mansours, the Steve Ballmers, this guy for Quicken Loans, David Gilberts. They're the rich guys. So it's the same thing that should be happening in Kenya. There are those guys who fund these presidential elections. If they get invested in sports, if they understand, fine, you might not be a former sports player. That's another problem we have in Kenya. You have to have been a former sports player to get
They really do, but
yes. That you just need to understand the business aspect and see the numbers. When you see the numbers of some of these federations, you're in shock because of the amount of money that these guys are churning out. It's just that because of lack of solid structure, the money that is coming then, of course, goes.
There's no accountability.
Yeah. Exactly. I was just going to say,
Yes.
There's two ways to go about it. This one is basically like, how do we get from a policy level someone who pushes from it? But I also feel like there's people power, which we don't really focus on, you know? Even though we have like a certain federation, there are clubs, there are players. Like the federation exists because of the players, not the players existing because of the federation. And in a way, if the players or everybody in the industry comes in unity to demand for accountability of a certain thing, I think there's much more ability to come together than waiting for some. Because in my mind, I was thinking, who's the guy who's going to come and push policy on our behalf, you know?
There's so many guys.
Yeah, but it's the thing
and
of...
this rate lobby amongst the Kenyans with money.
Yes.
Exactly. But for me,
exactly,
I feel like that is waiting upon someone. But that's just my personal opinion, where I'm like, okay, I want them to do that, but in the meantime, what can we do to basically advance that? And I think accountability is a key thing. And if the federation, if the clubs and everybody comes together to basically say, this is our stand and we're not budging until this happens, then that creates some sort of, you know, like, I would believe that the people in charge would be like, okay, let's do something and, you know, like create accountability, use the money for what it's supposed to be and stuff like that. And so if it's the same thing as the power of the vote, right? If we've tried all these things and it's not working out, what if we try unity towards a certain cause and just say this is what we want for players, for federations, and come together and demand of it? I just feel like we have people power, but we don't really exercise it because everybody's like, what's the point?
We're greedy.
Yeah, we're greedy. We should be greedy for
Let me tell you, Carol and Navayola, today is 23rd, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And you can hold me accountable for this. I've said it on Radull Live. What is going to happen to the sporting scene in Kenya is that foreign guys are going to get into it because they understand the business aspect and they'll see the numbers. It'll take one deal, and then there's going to be a piggyback effect on the foreigners. And then that's when our guys will start saying, oh, clearly this thing has money. It's the same thing with Sport Pesa.
But you know, it's already happening.
It is.
In a small way.
In a small
if you
way,
look
yes.
at the two what we call Sonko clubs in Kenya.
Ricardo Badoa.
Right now,
And
yeah,
Wazito.
Badoa at Wazito.
Yes.
They're calling them Man City because
Yes.
they're probably they've come in to basically change the game in terms of what you pay players and the bus and you know all this organization.
Yes.
Then the City Stars,
With
which is Jonathan Jackson.
Yes.
And he's pumped in a lot of money. Real estate mogul pumped in a lot of money. Foreigner.
Yes.
And to some extent Sofapaka, although
Yes.
their owner is Congolese, but still,
But
he
still.
came 10 years ago. What did he do? He came through the second tier, came into the Premier League, won it in his first try because he had the money and the muscle
to make it happen.
And remember for Sofapaka and Congo in particular, you know, Congo are way ahead of us in terms of team ownership because think
Way.
about TP Mazembe.
Yes.
And it's called
Governor.
Katumbi.
Katumbi
Moise, yes,
owns,
that guy.
team.
Yeah, you think about Simba now in Tanzania with Mohamed Duji putting in $50 million. South Africa, those guys are way ahead of us, you know, in terms of the Patrick Motsepes and the guy who owns Kaizer Chiefs. So it's already started, like you said, with Wazito and City Stars. And it's going to get bigger. There's going to be these guys who come from the countries where sports is a business are going to be like, you know what, guys, the talent in this country is ridiculous. There's a potential to make a lot of money off this sporting world. Let's go sink our money there. And then that is when the Kenyan guy is going to be sitting down and saying, oh, so I don't have to build flats. Kenya is a copycat economy. I swear, Kenya is a copycat economy. One person puts up an office block, 10 guys put up office
But I think you also have to recognize, I generally...
Or chickens? What are they?
Quail.
Quail.
I forgot about quail eggs.
Everyone is doing quail farming.
Yeah.
That's greenhouse farming.
It's-
Everyone starts greenhouse farming.
And-
It's true. We're not innovative.
And then an offshoot for that, just to touch close to home, is once now you have the money coming in, that's when now this apparel, sporting apparel brands now grow, because you can attach yourself to an athlete. For example, you think about how Nike started. It started in the late 60s. No one knew of it until 1984. We were talking about it because of Michael Jordan. They paid him $250,000, which was by far the biggest contract that time. And their projections were that Nike was going to make $3 million in 3 years. They ended up making $126 million in the first year, and changed the culture. That's why we put on sneakers in the weekend, right? But remember, when you go back, there's somebody who owned that sporting organization. Jordan, that was his work. His work was to play basketball, and because he was being paid for that, Nike benefited off that.
Yeah,
Trick
but
one.
there's
I want us to go into a break. We have
Yes.
to take a break. But I also want to come back with that, on
Point.
cue with that,
Yes.
and talk about your brand and how you're
Thank you.
investing in some of our athletes who's
Yeah.
representing you, or you're about to sign $1 million deals with them. Guys, I owe you the Batika question, yes, so that somebody can win this kit here. Now, here's the question. Batika's midweek jackpot is Kenya's most affordable jackpot. How much do you need to stake to win 15 million shillings? Batika's midweek jackpot, Kenya's most affordable jackpot. How much do you need to stake to win the 15 million shillings? All I want is the amount you need to stake, followed by the name of your Mashinani team that you would like to nominate to win this kit this week. And it's not a must that when I come to present it, if it is close by, that you give me a jersey, but if you do, I will wear it. And at some point, we need to talk about branding and marketing.
Yeah.
Because that is another aspect where I think our sporting industry is getting it very wrong.
Absolutely.
So, guys, answer the question, and by the end of the show, we will pick one team to win this kit from Batika and a ball. So we will see you in about 1 minute after the break. Here's Michael Owen By the way, I'm a fan, even as though he was not an.
Africanacity is about finding ways of getting things done. And I've found 4 players in the Premier League from Africa that I think are going to get it done this season. Starting off at Arsenal with Thomas Partey, a real good signing, I feel, from Mikel Arteta in an area that Arsenal really needed to strengthen. I think he could be an important player this season. Going across North London to Tottenham, Serge Aurier. Plays at right back normally under Jose Mourinho. He developed into a great player and now he's gracing the Premier League as well. And again, staying in London, Hakim Ziyech. He's transferred to Chelsea and we're all looking forward to seeing the impact he has on the Premier League. And then finally in South London, Jordan Ayew. I believe Jordan scored probably the best goal in the Premier League last season. I certainly voted for it. And he's got great feet, great technique, and I think he could have another great season for Crystal Palace. At the end of the day, all players need to find ways to assist their team to get things done. That's Africanacity.
Welcome back. This is Radull Live. Yes, we're talking about the business of sport, but I do need to remind you that if you need an assist to achieve your goals in 2021, do speak to ABSA, guys. Open an ABSA One account, get flexible loan facilities, and use that money to basically, achieve your life's goals for at least for this year. You know, it was a tough 2020. We all need to be rescued. Simply text the word ONE, O-N-E, ONE, O-N-E to 22268, and someone will call you back on the weekdays and let you know how you can open an ABSA One account and how you can get access to their loans. That's Africanacity. That is ABSA. Is it O-N-E or 0-N-E? I always wonder. Hey, people, you guys want to win kids. I can see Frank Castro, you nominate Wazito United. Wazito in the Premier League, or which Wazito? I need to give teams that need this stuff. Black Ace nominates Young Rovers FC in Gataka, Ngesti Dunga. I nominate Kirigiti Community FC. Kirigiti got kit. This team is from Kirigiti, primary in Dagoretti. Unless this is a different team, Ngesti. King Julian nominates... why is everyone going for Wazito? No.
Pool.
Huh?
Pool.
I nominate Young Rovers FC. That's Martin Orico is nominating them. Bonnie is nominating Mudidi FC. By the way, guys, do you have any questions for our guests about the business of sport? And if you do, put them down here, then I'll ask them as well. Because I also want to bring the conversation a bit home. Mm-hmm. First of all, you had a point where I cut you off when we were going to the break. What were you about to say?
Yeah, I was basically saying, in as much as we're kind of like hitting on the Kenyan investor, it's also, important to recognize that the way we have set up our country laws for investment, it's much easier for a foreigner to invest than it is for a local to thrive. I think we've basically looked at FDI in such a way, like we want to increase foreign direct investment. And so we have basically put our policies to increase that. We have put the EPZ, we've put the ECZ, and there's so much benefit that comes from that. And so if we take that policy and apply it to our businesses and sports in particular, it's exactly what you're saying. Like there's an incentive, there's like a tax holiday, there is, you get like work permits for like experts to come in, and you get all those kinds of things. If you, like the reason why it's easier for foreign investors to come in, we've made it easier for them to come. And then also there's that Kenyan thing of, unfortunately, we always feel like foreign is better. And I just feel like when you're navigating through the offices and the bureaucracy, sometimes foreigners get a bit more, you know, like we are kinder to them than we are on our own.
We're still mentally
like,
colonized
yes,
in many ways.
Yes,
I'll put on my other hat now. I'll put on my lawyer hat and say it's not really correct. That's the assumption. But in actual sense, the investment opportunity for our local, from the business laws, from the company laws, they're very good. It's just that, like I said, the quintessential Kenyan business person does not look at these things.
Yeah.
The EPZs, for example, there's no EPZ when it comes to sports. There might be one when it comes to textile.
Yes.
That's fine.
Yes.
There might be one when it comes to textile. But the investment I'm talking about, the initial investment into a sporting organization, their tax breaks even on that as we speak. Section 15(1)(z) of the Income Tax Act that people don't know about.
I think
so
I'm looking
somewhere is not doing the marketing and PR job.
Yeah.
To let Kenyans know that there's a massive opportunity. You're the sole voice. You're the sole voice telling people, put your money here.
Let me tell you, Carol, remember when Sport Pesa was being hit by government the first time about...
I was going to say when.
Yes. Sorry,
government's been on their case.
The first time it happened. There was an amendment to the finance bill in 2016, which basically now said any money that's used towards sponsoring sports is what they call an allowable deduction. It's an expense. So like it's an expense incurred to generate income for the business, and therefore it's an allowable deduction. And Sport Pesa CEO Radull went out on social media and he was complaining about the taxes that have been levied against the betting industry. And I asked him, I was like, come on guys, you really don't know the loophole that is there in terms of the tax incentive you've already been given? He didn't even know. Like on Twitter, he was like, no, we've just found out about it. Because I remember I took a picture of it was an article on Nation where he was saying they had found out about it. That was in 2018 January. So I was asking, so who's doing your work in terms of like finding out that the incentive is already there? It's just that, like you're saying, no one is.
We don't know about it.
We don't do our research. We don't do PR. We are just not doing. But again, it boils down to what? We don't think of sports as a business.
And such few people are selecting sport, like you're a sport lawyer.
Yes.
You know, people on it's only now I'm beginning to hear someone saying I'm actually studying sports business or something to do with sport.
Yes.
Otherwise, sport for Kenya, the clubs are not run by people trained in sport in any way.
Yes.
So there's, as you're saying, this obvious things
yes.
that are actually supporting them and they don't know.
Yeah.
And then our sports people, unfortunately, are also in the same breath where they bump into sport late in life.
Yes.
When you're in your late teens, you should be
at your peak,
cultivating it when you're much, much younger. I want to ask you, what are some of the challenges you go through as somebody who's not sat and waited for serikali, you know?
Yeah,
You've done it yourself.
Yeah, I was kind of listening to him and I'm like, yes, that applies. But I think if you're looking at a global perspective, and especially if you're in manufacturing, it's a different set of laws. And maybe that's why I'm thinking in terms of policies that support foreign investment as opposed to like local. So there's two things. I think one challenge is that even as we're setting local sports companies, we're looking at Kenya. Someone is not really saying, I want to go to East Africa or the world or in Europe. And so that first of all limits your thinking. And then secondly, if you're going into manufacturing, And then so to basically benefit from the incentives put in the government, by the government to benefit from manufacturing, you have to, it's easier to be a company that's kind of coming out in as opposed to in out, because then you, if I have to set up a factory in order to benefit from the EPZ or ACZ Act, and I'm like, I don't have money to set up a factory, but I can work with you if you have your local factory, but you don't want to sell abroad, I should be able to get the same benefits because we are working together.
Where are your shoes manufactured at the moment?
In Kilifi. Right?
Kilifi.
Yes. But the company that produces it is not interested in the market that we are. Like they basically have a market that they're supplying. So to basically set their factory as a special economic zone or an EPZ, it's not in their best interest. And therefore, as a company, I'm like, I want to benefit what these other foreigners are benefiting from, but I can't because the government law says I have to have a factory and I don't have a factory, right? And then I'm like, okay, even if you're the person who is in charge of this thing, how many Kenyan youth have the money to build a factory, you know? And so it becomes really difficult to be able to do that. And then,
I can see that.
Yeah, and then
I can see the challenge. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think also the other challenge is just appreciating, like even just getting Kenyans to appreciate. I think one of the most asked question I get is like, is it quality? You know, and I'm like, you know,
why are you doubting?
Which is a very bad
Why
question.
are you doubting it? Just
it's
because,
like, and when we say we sell them
guys,
outside Kenya, that's when
this is my Ender Sportswear. By
Yes.
the way, I want these are the lapatets.
yes, these are for the Calais Lavatet.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, not
Yeah.
lapatets.
No.
Lapatet.
Yes, that's how you say it.
Abusho, can you
I
see
don't know, you
this?
can see it.
But
Yeah.
I want these ones. These ones
yeah,
look cool,
we can talk after this.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it is also getting us to appreciate that we can create, like we don't have to need outside validation to say that this is a good product. But I just feel like there's a lot of that, and we have
So
to.
there's a lot of lobbying that needs to be done.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it is lobbying, but sometimes you also just get tired of the lobbying and you're just like, let's just do it. Whoever comes
Whoever wants to
will,
buy,
yeah,
buy.
whoever wants to buy. But I would say one of the things I have learned is there are many opportunities, and even like manufacturing sometimes might be a little bit difficult for like people to get in. But in this day and the age, for example, of YouTube and Instagram and TikTok, nothing stops someone from being like a sports commentator, like being very niche and just saying this is exactly what I will do. Like I am in the running space, so I see a lot of people who are specifically talking about running and running shoes and everything like that, and they're making a lot of money, you know. And so I think sometimes we always think of sport as this big thing where you have to, you know, make kit or you have to like do something, but sometimes it's also the easy ways to get in where you're all either like you can do something like that, or even help like athletes get managed. One of the things that really hurts our athletes is getting the wrong managers and sponsors, and then something happens, I don't want to mention that specific athlete, and the manager is like, I did my job, you know, like if he got in trouble, that's him. And I was like, dude, you make money from this guy. It is your responsibility to find out what happened, to stand up for him, to, you know, like to be, but then it's become so transactional. And one of the challenges, especially with the athletes, they get these agents to help them find races. And in this day and age, I'm like, the internet is there. Like you could be that person that essentially gives the athletes the information that allows them to go into these spaces. Of course, there's the rules of athletics, Kenya, and
Guys, are you
stuff like
taking
that.
notes? Those of you
Yeah.
who say you're jobless, there are
No,
jobs.
there's jobs, yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, but you kind of create that avenue, and some of it could even just be like charging a small commission where you identify the need and you basically say, how can we do that? There's a lot of information, and in my opinion, I just feel like we athletes don't necessarily need the agents. There is a way that you could be able to find races and go for it and get the money, because some of them pay as much as over 30%, because you have the government to pay tax, you have your agent to pay, and then they have to deduct expenses, and then you have all of us saying, yeah, buy for me lunch, you know? And so the guy doesn't have anything to take home. And so kind of getting into that space and making it easier, I think is a good thing. And last thing, also social media manager for athletes. Our athletes
Oh,
are
yes.
terrible
Oh,
at
yes.
social media, and I say that with so much love. But one of the reasons why athletes in other countries are able to make money is because they don't just focus on their sport. They could be like the, you know, ABSA ambassador or like the Blue Band ambassador. But then our athletes are very timid. They just win the race and they disappear. You know, they don't necessarily have to do that. But then if you look at the world of influencers, for instance, people are making money being on the internet. And you have a super...
Leave me alone.
You have like a super world champion champion, and he has nothing other than like what he had. And so there's also opportunity for the people now who are into this space, take the athletes, show them what to do, how to get this, like upload content, build your own website, have your rate card, and then talking to the corporates to be able to sponsor them. And so when I look at sports, I see all these opportunities. They're not being taken care of because, I mean, if you're doing like that, you have to go to E10 and organize these guys and, you know, like take the photos, like don't make life difficult for them, but you have to get on the ground, get involved, but the money is there. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
You've answered like my next 5 questions.
Yeah.
But it's good we touched on the opportunities.
Yes.
Because one thing I'm part of this organization called Just a Study, where our job is basically to
Fill the stadium.
Just on the stadium.
Yeah.
But when you talk to some of the clubs, you'll understand why their stadiums are empty. They don't have, when we started 4 years ago, most of them didn't have social media sites. The players didn't have social media handles.
Exactly.
Even those who had the content they were posting was
Yeah.
substandard. It's
Yeah.
not stuff people would want to see. And we're like, as just a study, we will pick one game, hype it, and make sure there's entertainment and everything around it. And on that day, there'll be a lot of industry. But we're telling the clubs, you can actually take charge on your own. You're hiring a DJ, a music system, get a halftime show, give information, because fans want information.
Exactly.
It's so easy to watch the English Premier League.
Yeah.
It's easy.
If you
The
That
schedule
is
is
true.
there, the apps are there.
if
That
you
is
go
true.
to I'll use 2 examples. If you go, for example, for a Kenya 15s game at home, I don't think there's anyone who's captured the essence of having fans like the Kenya Rugby Union. Because remember, in any stadium in the world, 2/3 of the people in that stadium are not there for the game. They're there for the experience.
Thank
A
you.
third of the people
Thank you.
are there to watch the game.
Yeah.
So you have to create the experience.
Exactly.
Remember, you're competing with cinemas. You're competing with locals. I mean, guys going to have a drink in the afternoon. You're competing with Koroga or whatever concert is happening that weekend. You're competing with all that. So you have to be able to give a 360-degree experience for the fan. And that costs money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going back to my initial point about the initial investment. So once you meet that cost of bringing in people into the stadium, now you make your money off the gate. Once you make your money off the gate, now you can go to the commercial partners. You can go to ABSA and tell them, ABSA, I can guarantee you 20,000 eyeballs every weekend at a game. What are you going to pay for advertising rights? Once ABSA comes in with that money, then now the TV will come and say, look, ABSA
That's
is
where
there.
the eyeballs
Who is there?
are.
The eyeballs are there. Let me pay big money for that. That's the chain in terms of
And then the broadcast sponsor will
Exactly.
say, everyone's watching the game.
Yes,
Let
and
me
then
get on board.
and then before we know it,
That is actually the Just a Study concept.
Yes.
And if Rona had not happened,
yes,
last year it took us about 3 years to get a permanent partner. Matika came on this time last year, and we had Kisumu, then Mombasa, then I think Kakamega, then Kericho. We were supposed to go to Kakamega, then the lockdown happened and Rona spoiled everything.
Yeah.
But that was the whole concept. They were paying our costs.
Yes.
So
Exactly.
they pay the DJs and the artists and everything. We fill the stadium, the home team gets the gate.
Yeah.
And if you do that consistently for long enough,
Yes.
and most people who go to the stadium, again, it's perception why they don't go. And when they go and have a good experience, they'll be back.
they'll
That
be
is
back.
true.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
and it's I was watching this. Let me tell you, any business that is done in this country has been done elsewhere.
That is
It's
true.
just that you tailor it according to your local setup. And I was seeing this particular YouTube video about Stanford graduates talking about they're in various organizations heading up the business angle of those sporting organizations. So there was the San Jose Earthquakes, that the MLS team. There was the Golden State Warriors. There was San Francisco 49ers, the NFL, and they were talking about the business. And they were saying at the end of the day, everything is centered on the fan. You have to create an experience for the fan to be there. Even the athlete to get all those followers.
Yeah.
For Cristiano Ronaldo to get all those followers on Instagram.
The followers are the fans,
The followers are
essentially.
the fans, exactly.
Yeah.
And you have to create that environment for the fans.
Yeah.
For him to get
In fact, I
endorsement.
keep telling people, by the way, Ronaldo, I think it was 2019, he made more money on his social media
Yeah.
than
Yes.
he did
On his salary.
on his salary
Yes.
and bonuses.
Exactly. And that's what I always say for Kenyan athletes. We are not there because we we just run and then we don't.
And then we go
I'm
home.
like, dude, you can make money.
You take your prize
can
money
make
and you go home.
I
you
know.
go home.
And sadly, also another opportunity I've thought about is books, because we don't do a lot of books, but every single book, at least I think Henry Wanyoike has a different one, but every book about running with Kenyans, there's even literally a book about running with Kenyans. It is written by a non-Kenyan, you know, like even one book was literally about preparing for the Lewa Marathon or something like that. And then I'm always like, they write about their experiences with our athletes, you know, like there's a lot of name dropping, And I'm like, why don't we have a book by Asbel Kiprop, Geoffrey Kamoro? Like their experience is unmatched. And if all you just need to do is like do, as part of the agency, like do a book tour in these capitals, where there's a time I was at the Boston Marathon, I could not meet the Kenya team. Like they were in that, the security was that tight, like you cannot meet the Kenyan team. And I was like, wait, these are guys from home. But it's the same concept where they go and they are so popular that they need security to go around. And I'm like, sell a book, you know, like have something. But if we are not kind of putting their mentality from in a commerce perspective, then we're doing them a short
disservice.
Exactly. But as you said before, their job is to run. Their job is not to write books.
Yes.
And so
But they
the
should have
opportunity
managers.
is to have that person that basically say, like, do this.
Let's do this.
Let's do this.
Yeah.
And you make the money and they make the money, but then
Yeah.
you've kind of like expanded the
Instead of
basket.
sending me proposals,
Yeah.
telling me, by the way, I get proposals every day. Radull, I have this idea for a sports show. I have this idea for send those proposals to the athletes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Look for
Yes.
what it is they're not doing. And
Exactly.
by the way, start with social media.
Yes,
All
social
these guys
media
who
is
send
the
inboxes
easiest.
are
Yeah.
very good on social media.
Yeah.
In their own small way.
Yes.
Go and ask somebody like
Exactly. Go live with him. Take his morning run. Take it
Julius Yego,
make him
posts like twice a week.
I know, right?
No, that's
And
on the
he's-
high side,
Yes.
you know.
Yes.
And go and tell him, you know what? Let me not move in with you.
Yes.
but follow your life and post regularly.
Exactly.
You know,
Because that's
You know-
where
and give
the
myself
money is.
a
You know-
job, and you will see the benefits.
Exactly.
Their fear is, of course, they're going to be parting with something in terms of money. But I mean, to make money, you have to spend.
I was
money.
just going to say
Yeah,
that.
to make money, you have to spend money. You think about the agents who have made like billions or hundreds of millions of dollars for their athletes. You think again, I'm sorry. In terms of endorsement, I always go back to this guy because he's the father of endorsements. That's Michael Jordan. I always go back to him. For him to get to Nike, even it was his agent
Exactly.
who told him, "Look, I can get you Converse, but you're not going to be the top guy." He wanted to go with Adidas. Adidas weren't willing to give him the creative will. So this guy says, there's a company called Nike. It was a company. It was not, yes. A company called Nike. We can go and see what they have to say. And of course, he didn't want, and he talked to the folks, and the folks told him, look, you'll be stupid if you don't get onto that plane. And the rest is history. And you can see the amount of money that Nike is making off athletes, as much as also athletes are making money off Nike. So it's the same, you need somebody to hold this guy's hand.
Yeah.
But
And
no,
to explain that
Yeah.
the benefits.
And
No,
someone
right now-
honest. Don't take
Thank you. That's
advantage
what I
of
was going
our
to say.
athletes.
Somebody
Someone
honest.
honest. Do not take advantage of our
That's the
athletes.
Take advantage of our athletes.
No,
you
but
know?
the thing is also, speaking with them, there's so many people who come to them with I have a plan, I have a thing, you know, and so even them, they have this mentality
The
of,
push, the
they're
pushes,
like,
yeah.
just, like stay, like, who are you, what do you want to do and stuff like that. But I do think if there is someone who can, I don't know, maybe that it could be a partnership with Athletics Kenya or someone, but somewhere where they could say this is a trusted source, and whoever takes that, because also the problem, things that ruin sports are the like violation of that integrity and trust. Like you trust someone and then they run away with the money, or they do, and then the players are just left like what happened, you know. And so I think that's also something where we are all talking about let's grow sports, but if you're kind of getting into that field, understand that these are people who have been exploited for a really long time. So that would be just my appeal. Stay away if you're not coming to help.
It's true. But then
Yeah.
I think what you say about invest, I actually invest, if I'm supposed to talk about myself,
Yes.
in, like, I did this show for almost 6 months before I got a sponsor. So paying
You
the cost
invested,
out of my
yeah,
pocket.
yeah.
But after that, I've got a sponsor. And
Yes.
Absa came and said, you know what, I want that product. People keep telling me, Radull, you're making money on social media, you're selling DSTV and Guinness and all these brands. And I said, well, I spend money on my
it.
social media.
Exactly.
You know?
Yes.
And it's taken a lot
Long
of
time,
years of
yeah.
spending and not receiving to begin to receive. People underestimate the trust the process.
Exactly.
Yes.
Trust the process.
Yes.
This
Takes
is a
time.
process.
It
Yeah.
takes
You don't
time.
wake up and do that. Just a few comments here. I've been ignoring you guys. Sorry, you guys. I've been ignoring you. Deco Kazola says, corruption is killing our Kenyan football, and this is where we lack solid structures. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But again, begin to look at yourself. I think that's what this conversation is.
Yeah.
It's okay for us to blame the ministry and the federations and the
Yeah.
governments, but what are you
What are
doing?
you doing
Yeah?
yourself?
Jimmy Ngaramba says, I cannot deem the sportsmen and women timid for not being brand ambassadors. This country is upside down.
It's not.
I think what he just means, which you also answered,
Uh-huh.
is educate
Exactly.
the athletes,
Yeah.
also educate corporate Kenya, because athletes, and then this is probably going to take us into branding and marketing, because the corporates don't yet see sports people as people who can sell my product as much as they should.
Yep.
And on the flip side, the sports people have not really branded themselves.
Exactly.
There was a whole discussion on a WhatsApp group, which I'm not in, but they were discussing me, and they were saying, why is Radull getting all this money for sports, which should really be going to sports people? And they said
Exactly.
it's basic. Look at her following on social media.
Exactly.
It's that basic.
Exactly.
And it's something you've built. And
Yeah.
yet, you as a sports person, you can build the same thing.
Exactly.
You know?
The
Yeah.
do's and don'ts of, and remember, Radull, that's the conversation we had on the other show, like the do's and don'ts of the boardroom side now, the business side. That's a conversation that athletes should be taken through.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, our federations, I feel like, stop that, because the minute then our athletes chanuka, it's another story altogether.
They'll start. I think that we discussed. I think that's where we were
Yes.
discussing how
Yes.
Harambee Stars deal was signed,
Yes.
and suddenly you're seeing Oliech and Wanyama on billboards,
Yes.
and they've not been spoken to
Yes.
as athletes.
Oh,
Yes.
wow.
So some deal has been signed above their heads,
Yes.
and because they're playing
Amazing
abroad,
that-
their agents are like, "Excuse me."
Exactly.
Yeah. You have to pay top dollar.
Me.
Yeah.
And I hear for rugby, the time they unfortunately went and covered Brand Kenya
Yeah.
when they were in Paris.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There was a
remember
similar
that.
issue.
Yeah.
As in, the federation was receiving, and you do more rugby analysis than I do, but I do know that the federation was given a cut that should have gone directly
to the.
certain
They had
players.
it was a funny story. They had an OD, and when money was sent from Brand Kenya, it was taken by the OD, by the
overdraft.
fund facility. It was taken.
But I know that story very, very deeply.
And
And I was called here for many conversations.
it's a very unfortunate thing, but yeah, I honestly believe like federations are like in the rugby space, players for a very long time have been wanting to come up with an association for themselves, so that and the minute an association comes into play, then they can strike, and that's what happens big time in the Western countries. So I know for a very long time KRU avoided that because they knew where they were naughty. They knew holding back salaries and doing all that stuff. And they knew immediately we recognize this association, these guys will be on strike more than we know. And that's where the problem started. So most of these federations know exactly what's happening. They know the problems that the players are facing.
It really hurts me because for me, a working sport industry
Thank you very much.
will have enough
Money for
to
everyone.
go round
Yes.
for
Yes.
That is true.
everybody.
Yeah.
But the
From the
problem,
groundsman at Kamtoyoyo
yes.
to the federation officials to the players, there'll be to the journalists, there'll be enough for everybody.
But the problem is
But
also
now we just want to.
the nani now.
eat
What are they
ourselves.
called? The guys who are running sport now. There's also a very in my days mentality. In our days mentality, in our days we used to earn 1,000 bob. Who cares about your days? These are
Yeah.
different days.
Yeah.
There's a very I hear
We need to
players.
move,
We need to move.
grow.
I hear, and that's a problem I have with former players managing sporting organizations, because they will come with that. In our days, who cares about your days? Your days past. You should be doing what is with the times, and it happens like okay. Obviously, for me, because I'm involved in the rugby space quite a bit, I hear it a lot. Why I used to play with even us, we played for our heart, or rather, us we played with our heart.
We played for the love of it.
My guy, those are different days.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a. I feel like our players are our athletes are deliberately being denied knowledge, so that the people who are
people
calling the
can-
shots can continue having fun like
How
they've
can we
had.
how can we change that? Or we just talk about it and talk about it and talk about
One,
it?
my belief is always domino effect. You need one federation to get it rolling, and that's where our work comes in. We'll keep on banging on doors to see if we're going to be allowed to come in and have this conversation. But you need one federation to do it right, and the athletes in that particular field having it right. For example, if rugby do it right, and the rugby guys are now millionaires or tens of millionaires, then
Everybody
FKF will
else.
be stupid to sit down and say, hey, these guys are making money. Athletics Kenya will be like, hey, our guys, I mean, we no longer get favor. And corporates follow where the following is.
Yeah.
Corporates follow who has most eyes, like we've just said. Who wants the association, basically. The association with the general.
Corporates are there to sell products.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
Yeah.
So
They're not they're not NGOs.
they're not NGOs, and they're there to make money.
Yeah,
so
they're there to make money.
we just it starts with one. We'll keep banging the doors. We'll keep having these conversations. We'll hope that one day one federation will have the sense. And actually, I was thinking about, remember the thing we're talking about, politicians and involvement in sports. And I think about the level at which the Kenya Open is right now. It's on the European tour.
Yeah.
And the reason why Kenya Open got to that level is because of Kibaki and his insistence on attending the Kenya Open each and every year. It raised the profile of the game. And that's where.
You see, if I was a golfer, I would have voted for Kibaki. If I play football, I know who loves football
Yes.
and who does not.
Yes.
You know, very quickly, because we're almost out of time, I'm going to ask our director to allow us to go over. No, we're going to go over. We're going to go over with branding and marketing. Yes. This is something our teams are getting very wrong. I think. Was it you I mentioned too? The team that wanted to award me with a national jersey.
Yes.
It's this team.
Yes.
They won this kit here. Then when the chairman called me in the week, he said, I know you're an Arsenal fan, and when you deliver the kit, we'll give you an Arsenal jersey. I told him, I will not accept it.
Yes.
I want this.
I don't need another Arsenal jersey. I have like 30 or something, home and away for the last God knows how many years. I said, I don't know where to get a Soccer Sisters jersey. How about you give me a Soccer Sisters jersey?
Yes.
So when I went to present it last week in Dagoretti, and they put my name on and everything. But I was like, this is the CEO of the chairman of the club, which I found out also runs a security firm, a very nice gentleman, gives his own time, gives his own money, uses his own staff to manage this team. But even he was getting it,
Wrong.
Yeah.
something so basic, so wrong.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And we need to, our sporting industry just needs so much guidance
On branding.
Yeah.
on branding
Yeah.
and marketing. Because you're here, we have to touch on player contracts.
Yes.
Because you are a sports lawyer.
Yeah.
Our players are being taken advantage of. I don't know how it is in athletics where you focus on a lot, but I know in
I'm
football,
almost certain it's the same thing, but anyway.
It is.
football
but,
players are just so happy to get a club, especially if it's a big club. They look at the figure and it's a
that's
wrap.
right.
Yes.
Yeah. No.
Like we said the last time, just don't look at the figure, look at the exit clause. Look at what rights you are assigning to your club. Because most
Image, all
image
these
rights, what commercial rights are you assigning to the club? Because in most cases, like we talked about the football one, we talked about the rugby incident, like the players have not assigned their commercial rights, they have not assigned their image rights,
Yeah.
but the parent bodies, being the sporting organizations, are feeding off the
Of the
money
money.
that has been given by the corporate, but the money is not trickling down to the athlete.
Yeah.
So, look, it's not about it. Yes, money is everything, but you might be giving out rights.
Much more.
Yeah, you might be giving out much more rights. For example, your salary is 100,000, and you can survive easily on 100,000. But you can find for an image right, light boxes, just for light boxes for a year, easy. You can take home 1-2 million shillings, right?
Yeah.
And that's in a half. So
Yeah.
be very careful. Exit clause, of course, obligations, and what rights are you assigning to your contractor?
I think most athletes, exactly. I was just going to say, people are scared of the cost of the lawyers. Like, what does it mean? And I think Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's
True,
not
true,
cheap,
true.
but I think it's also the classic case of cheap is expensive.
Yes.
Because there's a
Yeah.
reason why those guys are giving you and telling you sign. You have this money, like you're thinking you can take care of your mom and you can do everything. But as we said before, you have to spend money to make money. And secondly, I think there are places where you could go and literally look for pro bono, but do not sign without having someone else look at that document. At least, and not someone else is not your friend, and it's not a lawyer from the club. It has to be someone who is independent, and at least you can get talk to them something. But do not let cost be the thing where I say, this guy is asking for 30, 40K just to look at a document. It will cost you.
It'll cost
Yeah,
you much.
it'll cost you.
But I was going to take that a step further.
That's
and
cheap for
say,
some lawyers.
Ngarua.
Ngarua,
Yeah.
surely you can have a window
You know, let me tell you, Carol.
where you
let
can
me
say for this week,
Yes.
I am inviting
Yes.
Kenyan Premier League and National Super League players to come to my office. I will give them free advice and just 1 week.
Let me tell you another funny
That's
thing
a
about
good
it.
idea.
We've tried, and you're not saying anything I haven't tried. Not on the football side. We tried organizing sort of like a conference, for lack of a better word, for the rugby player system and the do's and the don'ts, what you look in the contracts, that kind of stuff. What 2-3 guys, and I was going to handle the legal side, but somebody else was going to handle the commercial side, you know, and even how you behave as a sports person. Like you're a role model, for lack of a better word, not on the level of the Western guys, but you're a role model. And come the day, no one showed up. So it let me tell you, there's a
Stabbed your heart.
serious behavioral change that needs to happen in the sporting scene. And the guys who are serious, they'll make their money. The other guys will just remain as jokers. So personally, me, I've said it so many times, I'm even willing to work when there have been disputes. There are some guys who their images were used again on billboards, and I told them, look guys, you know you're entitled to money. Si tukae chini tuongea. I said, sir, I have no problem. So how much are you going to be? I said, look, don't pay me now. We'll work on a contingency. I'll do the case for you. We'll work on a contingency later on. And they were afraid of going against their sporting organization because
That's you know that both of the things. I mean, there's so much intimidation in our sport,
Yes.
That is
and
true.
nobody wants to bite the bullet, so to speak,
Yes.
and be the sacrificial lamb and say,
Yes.
you know what, I'm going to go up against this federation and I'm going to make sure that I make things better for the next generation. Instead, we're so happy to play for the national team and things like that. And I see it, I see it in volleyball, I see it in women's football, I see it every men's football. Nobody wants to be the one to take the federation to task. So unfortunately, they will step on you till kingdom come.
And I think I'd say one of the key things, just looking at how, for example, the athlete that spoke against Nike managed to thrive even after speaking out. And I think one of the things, we go back to branding. You have to be so strong as to have people support you and people around you. And so that even if this federation comes and says you're out, there's like public uproar. And you cannot match that to anything.
So
you have to build your
own
brand. Exactly. Because for the ladies who spoke against Nike for the whole maternity thing, speaking out actually catapulted their careers further than they have been. They got better contracts and stuff like that. And so it's the same thing for here. You cannot just go it alone, but you have to build a community around you that will support you and even question the federation when things
Kenya,
happen.
I mean, you interviewed Brian Yukuli on Thursday.
Yeah.
And that's how his career for Kenya ended. He spoke out against things that were happening. He spoke when SportPesa was the sponsor of the union.
Yeah.
He spoke out about how their allowances are not being paid.
Yeah.
He had to go to SportPesa directly, and the money was paid to the players directly.
I remember
And
that.
because
I
of
remember
that-
and he was captain at the time.
And he was
of
captain
Kenya
at the time.
Simbas.
And because of that, his career ended for Kenya.
like you're being punished.
You're being punished. And by the the most unfortunate thing is what? Okay, fine. Him and a couple of guys, senior players, they were done. Shortly thereafter, the guy who was the coach, Jerome, was also done. And the most unfortunate thing is what? The larger rugby fraternity tolerated that nonsense. And that's
Which is annoying.
Which is annoying.
Yeah.
Which is
Which is
really
annoying. But then players, make more noise about it. I guess you have to make a lot of noise. And as a media person, we also have a responsibility because unfortunately in Kenya, there's a story for that day.
Yes.
And then we
that's
forget
true.
about it.
Yes.
You don't realize that, actually, Brian's career ended and it's gone. It's finished. He's gone back to his club KCB, and that's it.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
So we also have to stay with some of these stories, keep them in the headlines, so that people pay attention.
Yep.
Your issue of a workshop, by the way, I know because we organized one as just a study about 3 years ago at KICC. We had a symposium. We invited the PS at the time, Kaberia, Nick Mwendwa was there, the KPL guy was there. We had KEFWA, the Players Association.
Yes.
And then we invited players and people. Turnout was okay. Could have been much better. The room was only like half full. Yet here was information. We even had someone from the Marketing Society of Kenya who had this great presentation on branding and marketing. You know, things that can help these people. But they don't consume it. And I don't know if it's because we're such a hustling nation that I'm like, I go and spend a full day at KCC when I could be selling
I could be
this,
selling something.
or running my business, or my Uber, whatever it is, you know. So unfortunately, it's a 360, but somebody has to bite the bullet. And I need to give plaudits to someone like Dennis Oliech. There's a time he refused to get on a plane because of allowances. And it's only Oliech who could do that at the time. As you say, your brand has to be big enough
to
for people
stand
to
up.
say, hey, Oliech is not going. What do you mean?
Exactly.
You know?
But
we can talk forever. There's someone else. Mesh Ronald has said, the lady is very conversant. Thumbs up.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then Deco Kazola, which we have to wrap now. He says, Osembo, send me a number 6 sports shoe. Tell Deco where he needs to go. By the way, I have beef with this guy for calling himself Deco. And this is a problem with a lot of Kenyans. We have branded ourselves on social media as foreign players, including KPL players.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
We have people like Heskey's Wanyama's brother. He's a Wanyama. Is Heskey a Wanyama? I have to try and remember. But we have big players who have made the name of the foreign players bigger than their own brand. Deco, we've had this conversation before. What is Deco Kazola?
Create your own brand. You know?
Name yourself whatever, Paul Kiongera, you know.
Exactly. That's a brand too.
Players.
Exactly.
Yeah. But tell them where they can get your sports shoes.
endasportswear.com.
Enda,
E-N-D-A. Exactly. endasportswear.com. You'll find all the details, and we do same-day delivery in Nairobi. Maximum 2 days outside Nairobi, but utapata kiatu hapo.
And they're Kenyan shoes, and they're comfortable, and you can work out in them, and they're worn by some of the big runners in LD.
Yes, in LD, 10 Kaptagat.
Name drop.
Joan Cherok Massa. Half. I'm letting down my relatives.
Humble was a pretender, so it's the other half that is being humble.
Yes. We have Joan Cherop. She's running for us. We have Susie Chebet, we have Kemboy, we have Alfred Mondi. Those are the athletes we are focusing on right now, but we hope to expand, and we are in talks with some of them, so you'll be seeing more of them later. And we'll be building their social media accounts, so you can watch us show the example of how it should be.
Hey,
no, for real.
We're going to do Ngarua.
For me, it's a time for those with money now to start investing in sports. If you don't get onto this train now, you'll be playing catch up, and unfortunately, the values of this team are going to go very high. You won't be unable to match up. So, from a business perspective, you invest now. For the sporting organizations, get your act together. Start looking at this from a business perspective. Make yourselves
attractive.
Make
to
yourself,
the investors.
and I have always said, money precedes systems. And by that I mean, you don't form your accounting policies until you have money, because you don't know where the loopholes are.
Exactly.
So money precedes systems. So let's focus on the business.
Now we have to nominate a team to win this kit. Unfortunately, we can only give one kit a week. I have the shortlist because they have asked for their teams 10,000 times. Washeke Esther has nominated Young Rovers FC, and Beniface George has nominated Mutidu FC, and I think they have got the most entries. Guys, I'm not going to give Wazito, or is this a different Wazito? Premier League, and they should be giving me kit to give away. What do you mean? This is a different Wazito. I don't know, but it's either Young Rovers or Mutitu. FC. The answer, of course, is 15 bob. That's how much you stake for the Betika midweek jackpot, where you can win 15 million shillings on betika.com. Yeah. Do I give Mutitu or I give Young Rovers?
What's the rationale?
Let the lady. There's no rationale because today, last week was easy because we gave Scotlanders in Machakos, which were yet to pick up their kit.
Where are they located?
They've not said. The Young Rovers have not said. Mutitu have not said. Guys, you've not said where you're located. Also say where you're located, because it's nice to give up country, because we've given Dagoretti, we've given Machakos.
Yeah.
Now we need to spread our wings.
Yeah.
So
it's like having no information to make a decision.
Yeah,
by
that's
the way,
true.
they've not really given me much more to make a decision. But yeah, it is either Mutithu or Young Rovers.
Okay, we can basically say at the same time, like on the count of 1, 2, 3, and if it's the same, yeah.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Mutitu.
Young Rovers. Time break.
A tight break.
Yes.
Yes. Again. 1, 2, 3.
Mutitu.
Okay.
Decided.
Get
Very
it.
Young
Yes.
I
Rovers.
think her voice was louder than echoed.
Yeah, I'm hoping it's a team that, you know.
Same here.
Yeah,
I'm
the...
only using
That's
the
a
name.
country and in need.
Yes.
And in serious need. So
Yes.
Mutithu FC, nominated by, let me see, Bennyface George. I'll inbox you and arrange how you can get the kit. But also, guys, also be telling us where you are so that we go around the country. We're not just giving Nairobi teams and stuff like that. But thank you guys so much. Thanks for watching. Thanks for
Thank
being
you
here. You guys, thanks for watching.
Thank you for
Lots of
having us.
information.
Yeah, hata hatujamaliza.
I'll tag Enda Sportswear on my Facebook page.
Awesome.
Unfortunately, I don't have my Instagram account. It disappeared yesterday. Facebook is trying to sort it out. I
Yeah.
hope they can do that very quickly. So that I can get my Instagram back. I don't have Instagram. But I'll tag Enda Sportswear. You're on all social media.
Yeah, we're on social
as
media.
Enda Sportswear.
Yeah.
She's on social media as Navayola Osembo. He's
Yes.
on social media as
Ngarua Kamwe.
Shouldn't have given her way out.
next week on Radull Live. Of course, we're leaving you with we have fixtures that we'll leave you with, just so you know. By the way, today we got the fixtures for Women's Premier League. I thought it's important. We
Yes.
can put in KPL and EPL.
Exactly.
Now every week we'll have Women's Premier League. Unfortunately, and this is a conversation we have to have for women, I asked them, can I have the schedule for the season like you give for the men's KPL? We said we have one, but it usually changes on Friday night depending on whether there's a venue available.
Oh, no.
That's the men have not taken. That's why today there are so many women's matches being played in the morning. So in the afternoon the men play.
Come on,
We
guys.
need these facilities
Yep.
for women. Guys, we'll see you next week on Radull Live, where we have another interesting conversation, hopefully that leads to the development of sport. Thanks for watching.
Thanks.